Good afternoon. Welcome to ACCP's CSR Marketplace virtual program, and specifically for today's session on leveraging company events for social impact, hosted by Impact for Good. My name is Jean Metzger. I am ACCP's Vice President of Membership Marketing and Communications, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today. For those of you who may be new to ACCP, the Association of Corporate Citizenship Professionals is the premier membership association working to improve the effectiveness of corporate social impact practitioners. We connect our members to the people, knowledge, and resources they need to enhance the impact they are having in their companies and in their communities. Before we get started with today's session, I'd like to remind everyone this is just one session of several that we are hosting this week. On the slide, you'll see our CSR Marketplace virtual schedule, and you can still register for the remaining programs. They are all being recorded, and we will make the recordings available to everyone who registers, as well as on our website. ACCP is committed to providing high-quality programming that shares practical and actionable insights. In addition to this week's CSR Marketplace virtual program, we have several programs coming up, including our monthly webinars and our Impact Measurement Summit in early December. We encourage you to register for these programs on our website. We also have confirmed dates for our 2025 Forum CSR Intensive, which will be in April in Chicago. And also we have dates for our 2025 annual conference, which will be in Atlanta next September. For those who may be interested in learning more about ACCP membership, you can visit our membership page for details on benefits and pricing. And for those of you who are already members, we encourage you to share information about ACCP with your network. Member referrals are our #1 source of new members. You'll find sample language and tools on our Member Get a Member webpage, and you'll see the links and the QR codes on the screen. Now for some housekeeping for today's webcast. We have enabled transcripts and closed captioning for this webcast. Click Live Transcript to view the subtitles. If you click the caret on Live Transcript and select View Full Transcript, you'll see the full transcript of the webcast. Chat is enabled for you to engage with one another and the panelists. We encourage you to share your thoughts, insights, takeaways in the chat. And we also encourage you to ask your questions throughout the program by using the Q&A feature. We will follow that. We'll follow the questions being asked throughout the program, and we'll save some time at the end to make sure that they all get answered. And with that, it is my pleasure to turn over the session to Alan Ranzor of Impact for Good.
Hello, Jean. Thank you so much. ACCP, we thank you, and everyone else who has joined us today. We're excited to have you here. I am the co-founder, managing partner of Impact for Good. And I want to start with just kind of talking about intros, I should say, of myself and my colleague Tom, who's coming on camera now. There he is. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, of course, our topic of the day. Like I said, I'm co-founder and managing partner of Impact for Good. I started as a nonprofit professional in international agricultural development, working on food security and organizational sustainability. And I met a meeting planner, and we talked about these challenges that meeting planners face in terms of truly connecting at meetings and events that have all sorts of interesting criteria, tight agendas, oftentimes large groups, limited space, and a host of other challenges. And our thought was that we could bring community service to our clients wherever they gathered so they could better connect with one another and leave something behind where they were when they left the destination community. Hence, Impact for Good was born in 2005. More to come on that on the next slide. But currently, just so you know, I manage as being a business owner, wear that business owner hat, but also direct the sales and marketing teams, partnership development, all while getting around the country to and the world to facilitate events. But before we go on, I want Tom to introduce himself. He's our Director of Client Experience. Tom, take it away.
Got it. Thank you, Alan. And hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm Tom. I'm Director of Client Experience for Impact for Good. I've been with Impact for Good for nearly a decade now. And it has truly been a transformative experience for me because this kind of unison between corporate social responsibility and the desire of people on site at events to feel good in the act of giving back has really been something that has inspired me throughout my entire career. Enough so that I have actually just recently got a master's in nonprofit management, and I want to incorporate all the stuff from the nonprofit side of things also into the CSR so that unison can be more communicated and much more refined in the events that we produce.
Awesome. Yeah, Tom has been with us for quite a while and brings more energy than anyone I know to any event. So I'm excited that he's joining for the panel today. Regarding our topic, we're talking about incorporating corporate social responsibility into annual events. Now, when we say annual events, we're talking about things like all hands. We're talking about sales kickoffs. We're talking about incentives. But we may touch on other types of annual events, or you might actually see some places where what we're talking about today can be applied, even if they're not those kind of big annual gatherings. Okay, as a CSR professional, you guys are not only professional jugglers, but of course master planners. But annual events are really they can be a different beast and often involve a lot more players and oftentimes a lot more challenges too. But I gotta say, before we go on, I wanna ask Tom real quick. It's been 3 weeks since the in-person ACCP event in San Diego, which was awesome. It was so good to be in person with you, first of all, and we had a great time. It was meeting so many unbelievable people. But what do you remember most about the conference?
Well, Alan, one thing is just the passage of time. I know for everyone on this chat, I feel like time is moving slowly, but also incredibly fast at this time of year. So I can't believe that's even 3 weeks at this point. But I think the thing that stuck with me the most was definitely the solidarity I felt among every single person that I had met there, right? Everyone was in there for their particular reason of doing good and making an impact happen and making sure that people that are in need have that avenue to kind of get our help. And the people I met, they were united by purpose and passion and this earnest desire to learn. So many people were asking very thoughtful questions and really getting involved with every subject matter and every panel I got to. So I know that not everything is easy when we're doing this and this inspiring work. And we spoke a little bit at the conference about friction versus frictionless. But I think even though in our desire to optimize things, I think the friction generates a kind of heat and warmth that when we have those challenges in front of us and we succeed at making something that's meaningful and also beneficial to people, that's what really kind of leaves that inspiring taste in everybody's mouth. Philanthropy should be felt. And I think that hard work really goes to show how everyone was putting in that hard work to learn as much as they could during that conference. And it was so nice to have made so many great connections. Some of you I see recognized in the chat and everything. So again, it's good to see all of you. And for you, Alan, what about you? What did you think that you got away from the event?
There were definitely a few things that stood out. One of the lines I remember was nothing for community without community, and that just reminder that everything we do for community has to involve community. I really enjoyed just that reinforcement, that point right there. I also enjoyed really thinking about it's amazing coming back from this conference with so many doers, so many impactors. And when you really think of the collective impact made by all these people in one place, working for these amazing companies that do such good in the world, when you think of the countless hours of volunteering and the tangible benefits, the grants that have been made, it's unbelievable how much impact that group of people make in the world to help people out. It really was amazing. I guess if I was to throw one other thing out, I would say that beating you in pool on the first night, Tom, was something that was a highlight. I'm just throwing it out there, but I'm not giving you the mic here to combat that point. So, when we talk about a little bit, I just want to give you a little bit of background here about our company so you know kind of where we're coming from, where our experience, where our recommendation comes from. But as I mentioned, in terms of how we were born, if you don't know us, we are a CSR company that partners with businesses to develop and host purposeful activities that are centered, of course, around community and philanthropic giving, trying to give back in a way that our clients makes most sense for our clients. Our history has been with team building activities, but we've expanded well beyond that into other services. And we're different from other types of companies in this space because we solely focus on CSR activities, okay? So think of us more as a CSR company that happens to do team building than a team building company that does CSR, okay? Now, coming from that background I mentioned earlier, I was a nonprofit guy. I'm in the DC area. We have quite a few nonprofits. I was working for International Agricultural Development Organization, focusing on food security and organizational sustainability, where I supported overall grant management. And when I met my business partner, a seasoned meeting planner, someone who had been in the meeting space for a very long time, and we had this conversation about meetings. Sort of sounds like a bad joke, like a meeting planner and a corporate social responsibility guy get together in a bar. And literally we were in a bar when we had this first conversation. So in a sense, it wasn't even a joke. But we basically were talking about about connecting with event attendees. This is what I was talking to my business partner about. And really how that's one of the main challenges of an event is you have to make sure people can connect. So connecting with each other and connecting with communities they visit, like that's really important. And so, when they were visiting, when during these meetings and events, we figured if we could bring our events to them where they gathered, we can actually help them connect with one another and their community in a unique way. So as you can see, we basically said, let's bring these CSR activities to our clients wherever they are gathering for all sorts of meetings. And that's what we're really talking about today, annual meetings and events. To paint a picture, our first event, don't cry for me, okay, I was there. But our first event was at the Ritz-Carlton in Jamaica in Montego Bay, okay? It's no longer the Ritz-Carlton Montego Bay, it changed name since then. And it was a client's incentive program. They were a financial services firm, and they were rewarding their small business and entrepreneurship division for having hit the goals from the year before. And so they asked us, what can we do to give back to the community while we're there? And so what we ultimately did was we partnered with the All Island Bee Farmers Association in Montego Bay. And here we had them building beehives on the water. Yes, there were red stripes. Okay, yes, there was reggae music. And there were beekeepers. There were no bees. That was a positive thing for that event, I might add. But the idea is that we had them building these beehives, learning about how these beekeepers were going to use these beehives as a tool for income augmentation, which really, in a sense, made them small business owners themselves. So through that event, we ultimately connected them to the local community. We connected to a cause and the type of philanthropic giving that made the most sense for our client. And through it, we also really received what was arguably the most important validation of our early existence, which was that giving back is a reward in and of itself. So we really wanted to kind of build on that and do this across the country, across the world. So our feeling is really that including community service in the agenda for annual sales kickoffs, for annual division meetings, for incentives, et cetera, is really a powerful way to inspire and motivate attendees. It fosters a sense of purpose beyond financial goals. It allows teams to connect with their company's values and broader community. And engaging in these CSR programs together builds camaraderie, of course, too. Strengthens teamwork, enhances morale, makes the events more meaningful. And it also reminds participants of the positive impact that their work can have on society, which can, of course, fuel a deeper commitment to their professional roles, their colleagues, and of course, their company. Makes them more willing to put on that hat with a logo or that shirt and tell people, I work for this company. I get more than a paycheck. I get something in here too. So ultimately, this alignment between purpose and performance, we believe can, of course, lead to higher engagement, more motivated, energized teams, which is why it's so important to include CSR into these types of annual events. And to quote a recent event participant who got to make stuffed animals with us, and they were donating them to an organization supporting children with Down syndrome. And he said, my sister actually had Down syndrome, he told us. And he said, in building bears like they did, and giving back to an organization that was so close to his heart, a cause that was so close to his heart, he says he's honored to work for a company that supports something like this. And off video, I remember him telling me, it's just like, I would do, because of what this company is doing to give back to a cause that's so important to me, I'm willing to do so much for this company. And that's the kind of the moment that we're working towards at every event, and we want that moment, that feeling of a participant that knows, like, this is I feel strongly because of what my company is involved with. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Tom, maybe I can get an amen.
You got it.
Appreciate it. But sometimes we even though we are aligned on what I just mentioned, others aren't necessarily drinking that kind of CSR Kool-Aid, so to speak, or don't know all that's going into it on your side, on the CSR professional side. So, we're lucky to be able to partner with people like you on the call today who are looking to put values into action. But, we do, of course, want to talk about the challenges we face. You see about all the different kind of services that we provide here. This is all the kind of, we bring this kind of passion to whatever we provide to our clients. So let's go to our next slide here. And we are going to turn it over to Tom to talk a little bit more about the agenda of our discussion goals today.
You got it. So what I want to focus on is like what Alan had said about the crafting of those moments. I mean, we need action items to get there, right? How do we curate and practice good stewardship on those moments in the actual event and beyond? So with all of these discussions that we'll have today, hopefully we can hit all of those notes. Now, I know that this audience is already going to be best served by this kind of content. You know this stuff back and forth, but I encourage you to take whatever you can from this, tweak it in your own way as whatever possible, bring it back to your teams and create something meaningful that is attuned to your mission alignments. So what we're going to do is we're going to outline our best practices with aligning with internal events teams. After that, we'll talk about highlighting the key challenges and the creative solutions for incorporating CSR into your events. After that, we'll provide practical tools to help you post-webinar. We actually have some materials that will be sent out afterwards, so you can take that and use them as you will, because we're all part of a community here, striving for impact together. So feel free to send those resources along to those that might need it and could benefit from being able to engage with our community that much more. And of course, we'll open it up for some Q&A at the very end. So we have Q&A stuff in the Zoom webinar component. So if you have questions, feel free to log them there and we'll be able to get going. But from there, that's our basic outline. So Alan, why don't we start with our juggler?
Let's do it. Let's move on. All right. So, coming off the ACCP conference in San Diego, and we just know, even if you're not part of ACC, that many of you have very small teams, okay? Possibly even going at it solo. It's very possible. And that's to support not only your initiatives, but also all the CSR basically intersections across your organizations. I will never forget actually the first ACCP event I went to, where there was a networking circle, and to break the ice, I remember asking the people around me. I said, well, how many people do you have on your team? And you got like the 2, it's only me, the 3, and then there was somebody who said, we've got 105 people on our team. And it was shocking. It was like a shocking revelation. It was like, I really thought people were going to jump on this person. But it turns out this person was part of the pro bono team for their consulting firm. So it was an anomaly, okay? But in most cases, my whole point is that you're working with small teams. I am curious if you could just throw into the chat, like, how many people are on your team? Just throw a number into the chat so we can see what we're working with here. I'm assuming, Tom, thanks for even throwing the question there. I see, we got 1, we got 12 from Jessica. Hi, Jessica. We got a number of, look at this. We work with a CSR team of 25. Okay. 350. All right. That is, I'm curious about that one, Allison. We can talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, look, we're seeing a lot of different numbers. 4, we got 1.5 from Julie. I think we've met both 1 and 1.5 there. But yeah, you can see that the numbers are particularly, they range there. Okay, Tom, thoughts on those numbers and what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of tracks from what we saw during the conference itself. Is everything is such an intact team that people get to know each other very well about how they all want to impact each other. So with the smaller teams, I find that there's a certain kind of speed to the decisions of like, how do we want to do this? And I find that kind of agility is also really interesting to watch as it goes, and to see this kind of breadth though. And honestly, the bigger numbers give me a lot of hope, because that means more and more people take this even more seriously. And like, you know what, we're going to invest, we're going to get people on this, because we know that if we invest in these people, all the people that join our company are going to feel invested in as a result. So that's really great. Also, I'm curious to see from the group too. I wanted to ask you all this as well, because we're getting into the chat. Has there been an unexpected responsibility that has come up within your team? So even if you're just 1 or 2 or 3, 10, 12, how many dozens, is there something that maybe has been a little unusual in your list of responsibilities that maybe you didn't expect when you first started to work in this particular field, right? Have you had to facilitate your own volunteer engagements? Maybe you've been pulled into the tech world and suddenly you have to be a production person that has to get everything working on all of your webinars and across different hybrid platforms. So I'm curious, if you'd like to, please put it in the chat, some little anecdotes, some interesting responsibility that you've had to take on as part of this role. Because after all, as this image indicates, we're all master jugglers at all these different responsibilities. I'm curious to see how all of our skills kind of intertwine in that way.
Yeah, I think that it's like we oftentimes we say that our favorite word, t-shirt distributor. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's things that you didn't expect. They weren't in the job description. You know, we always say that our favorite words are what if. You know, when a client says, hey, what if we did this kind of a give back program? What if we integrated this? And these kinds of what ifs can turn into things that just never had to do. Look, Joanne mentioning COVID and virtual events. Wow, yeah, for sure. Here we are in our virtual space right here. Would we have thought to do this years ago? There's a lot of software development, schlepper of stuff. That's definitely one that happens. And these are things that we did not anticipate at all when in terms of looking at your overall role there. So this is amazing. This is a lot of information here that I guess attributes to basically what we're saying, which is that we're all master jugglers here, as the picture indicates. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that, of course, that we'll go to the next slide here, and we'll talk about a little bit more about really what one of the number one things that we think would be useful for as we move into the heart of the topic here, which is alignment. Okay, when aligning with internal teams is of course so very important, right? And this starts with internal comms, right? This starts with that as being the foundation across the company. And I know that many of you push day in, day out to consistently promote and communicate your goals, the causes, the programs that you're offering and that you're working on, so the employee base is in the know about your CSR goals and activities. Updates that you're providing on impact, new opportunities, polls on causes to support, and more, okay? And all you do in that area is, also, of course, what helps you tell the story, a big thing we, of course, remember from a few weeks ago, just telling the story being so important. But I also know that while some of you work at companies where the C-suite is totally on board with your initiatives, I actually remember having lunch with one of the CSR teams that was there, and that came in force. Tom, you were there with me on that lunch. Their team was there in force. They must have had 4 or 5 people there. And said, how is it that you have so many people here? And they said it was all about buy-in. It was about buy-in, and they basically told us that their large team and their large budget were basically the result of the senior leadership's commitment to CSR. And so some of you have that going for you as well, right? But some of you don't, okay? And some of you don't have the ear of the C-suite or don't have connections to all the different departments. It's just something that if you need something, go here, but it's not necessarily an alignment that you have that keeps direct communication open both ways, not just you saying to them, but also when they know that they're doing something that they should be coming to you, okay? Some of you don't even, I mentioned meeting planning team, some of you probably might not even have a meeting planning team. And at the end of the day, though, there still are annual events that are taking place. Who's in charge of those? How are they integrating the work that you're doing? So at the end of the day, making sure that, of course, your CSR internal comms are known throughout the organization, and with the planning team for internal events is of paramount importance, okay? Something we definitely think it should, especially at this time of the year when people are already planning for those big events for next year, to reinforce. So I want to ask you a question if this has ever happened to you, okay? Because this happened with somebody a number of times. It's actually happened over the years, but I'll tell you that it happened in Denver last year at ACCP and I want you to just give me a nod in the chat, a yes, it's happened to me if this sounds familiar, okay? But last year when I was in Denver, somebody approached our booth as we were sponsoring, and a person came up, saw the name of the company on a badge. And I asked her, I said, were you involved in the planning of the incentive program that just took place in Maui? And she says, I don't know what you're talking about. It's probably not our company. And I said, Well, actually, I'm pretty positive that it was your company. I knew it was your company. I explained what we did. I said, your group was in Maui. She's like, I knew we had a group in Maui, but they didn't do anything to give back. And I said, well, they did though, because ultimately they actually participated in a program where this is a tech firm, they built STEM materials for kids, they built solar cars, they raced them, had some fun, but also donated them to a local organization on the island. She said, well, how could that happen? I didn't even know it happened. Okay, this is where you can start chiming in the chat if this has happened to you. Basically, a group got together. It was 300 plus people. She said, well, who tracked the hours? How do we know to match the dollars and everything? And nope, she had no idea that this event had taken place. And that particular situation, it was because that the planner, the meeting planning company, I apologize, the meeting planner had not actually connected with the CSR team at all. So this event was taking place, but the CSR team had no idea. Okay, if that sounds familiar, I'd be very curious in the webinar chat there if that's something that you've heard of. But this was obviously really really important to on the CSR side for impact, and being able to track everything is really important. Someone actually asked me on that same event, they came up and I noticed what their name badge said. I said, yeah, I'm excited about the program you're running in February. She said, how did you even know about that? And I mentioned how we had heard about it. And it turns out that a third-party meeting planner had been involved, and they had actually contacted us about their event, which is exactly, so she said, well, that's great to know, like so I can connect with them and make sure that, that of course, that we're able to have a say in what goes on, which is of course obvious. So, being in alignment with the meeting planning team, whether they're working internally or externally, is really important so that when these things are happening, you can track everything. Tom, do you want to talk about kind of the idea of a planning meeting and what that could look like?
Absolutely. And I want to call out really quickly to Kayla. She had mentioned data visualization and modeling too. It's exactly why that disconnect can be so hurtful, because if you don't have the data to actually visualize, then you don't get a comprehensive picture of everything that you're doing. So again, even though that might be a more kind of on the fringes of responsibility, knowing that's there, coming and bringing that in is so very crucial in getting a whole comprehensive look. Because if you don't have an understanding of yourself as an entire organization, then you can't focus in on the minutia of how effectively you can give back. Which brings me into when you actually implement the constant communications and promotions among your teams, among all the different meeting planners within the organization, aligning with you and kind of your goals for making sure that impact is felt across all the divisions. It just makes it a lot easier, because if you can make a consolidated thread where meeting planners come to you and say, hey, I have this idea for an event and I really want to do it. It's like, great, these are our focuses, our pillars of values. These are the things that make us who we are. Align with that and then talk to us. Make it a conversation. Because if you don't have that conversation, you can't grow altogether. So in order to have that, we recommend host a proactive workshop. Don't be reactive. Don't wait for somebody to have like, oh, I have this event that's coming up next week. Do you want to talk about it? No, you got to have it. You have to start it off and make sure that you can kind of get there. So with the goal of alignment and planning for incorporating givebacks into your events is going to be key. Understand event calendars and goals. Everyone is everywhere all at once. So get everyone to commit to a time so that you can really focus on it. Be clear on the budget, right? Everyone needs to know where the money's coming from and where that money's going. So provide guidance on that budget process. Who owns the procedures? Who has in charge of next steps? Get those clearly defined and make sure that every step of the way. I find that it's really helpful to kind of go back to that mission statement of whatever events or whatever pillar you're focusing on at every single step. Be like, okay, we got to get our calendar goals. We have to be mindful of our time because we want to be giving back to STEAM education. Here's our budget. We need to have this kind of budget because STEAM education material are expensive and we need to get them into their hands. Think about it each step of the way, because that constant reminder makes sure that there's no mission drift. So share resources available, right? This could be nonprofits you already partner with. So if you have a little personal list of all the people, the directors of volunteering at local nonprofits in your community, make that a public list, because everyone stands to benefit from facilitation partners that have a good understanding of what's going on. Also, proactively address change challenges and suggest ideas for CSR activities. Keep an active log. Things will go wrong no matter what the best planned event is. But when you track the things that go wrong, you can be best prepared for the next one. So we'll get to those details a little bit more in a moment and more into what exactly those challenges can be. But I just wanted to give you some ideas and have you think about that as we go on to the next one. Lastly, create and maintain a consistent story narrative among all those involved. Going back to what I said about going about that mission every step of the way, that constant narrative means that when a person has an idea, a thought maybe of how something could be done differently or better, they are so engrossed in that narrative that the things that they are thinking that could add to it is going to naturally fall into that flow. So with all those ongoing touch bases and check-ins, keep learning. So while the workshop will hopefully gain alignment, creating a platform for ongoing touch bases, whether these are time-orientated or event-focused, such as a postmortem touch base about an event, create a space where you can continue to review and improve. Alan, over to you.
Yeah, it's this kind of a meeting that we're talking about here in terms of having this proactive workshop can take the form of a workshop. And by the way, I mean, why not consider actually running a give back experience with the events team? You're doing something that to let them know what you're feeling, let them know what you're going for. We actually did some work with a client recently to help align their meetings and events team with their CSR team and proactively come up with ideas that they could implement in their events that they know are going to happen next year. And they range from their incentive to their all hands to their sales kickoff, and just basically prepped it now because, look, we're in September. People are budgeting for next year if they're not done already. So getting these things together was a great exercise to align their teams together and have them ready for what they knew was going to come from in terms of budgeting, cause, and everything. And it was really a great experience as we created this guide that they could use aligned with their philanthropic giving pillars that allow them to really be ready for 2025. All right, so let's go to the next slide here, where we are going to now jump into the common challenges faced. All right, so we asked, we're always trying to get information from our clients. We're always looking to kind of improve our services too, right? So we asked some of our clients some of their biggest challenges faced when incorporating corporate social responsibility efforts into events. And this word cloud represents some of those responses. And you see things here like alignment, which was referencing internal teams, space, time, location highlighted as key challenges here. Honestly, as you look at that word cloud, please call one out of something that actually is commonly that's something that is something you faced if you've been on the planning side. But certainly, we also want to ask a poll here too to you. Budget, of course. We should look at some of these responses first here. Time and space. There it is. Budget, space for sure. We got priority. How do you prioritize the actual give back experience, because it is important to your company. How do you bring that out in something as important as a national sales meeting? That's a great point, Sam. Timing. How do you fit something into? We only have half an hour. We only have 45 minutes. These are awesome. Okay. Choosing the right nonprofit partner, of course, to partner with. These are all key things here. And one of the things that in terms of incorporating CSR into your events, we want to bring a poll up right now, actually. So you guys have put some things onto the, you put some things into the chat already. We're going to actually try and get some stats behind that. If we can get that poll posted right now, that would be great. And here it is. So we're going to take about 30 seconds here. How to make it global. Wow, Katie, that is a great point and something that we actually hear all the time. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides.
Yeah, and Alan, while we're waiting for the results to come in, I wanted to talk a little bit about something real quick about. You may have noticed in that word cloud, there is the word CSR is in the common challenges faced. And that's not an accident. That's really, truly something we see, because so many people have to tackle the reality of what greenwashing can look in a corporate social responsibility space, where people question sincerity and all these different things and wonder, is this the right thing? Are we doing this for optics or not? And I think that is a very valid challenge that I think a lot of people will go through. But again, with the people at the conference and the people in this chat, we're always looking to do that good work. I mean, that was also one of the quotes that we heard in the conference itself, because that consistent desire to do good is what is going to be the driving force, and that will get us over that hurdle of CSR itself being even a challenge itself. But it looks like our poll results are in, so let's take a look, shall we, Alan?
Just speak to it, Tom.
Yeah, so it looks like majority of you had put pretty much to no to little time on the agenda and engagement event participants across multiple locations. And then sometimes it's too hard to pick all of these. Interesting that it was an alignment with the events team that wasn't chosen as much. So hopefully that means there's more alignment happening already, and that the other ones are the ones that we're going to prioritize in terms of the challenges. So, and what's great about these polling questions is that they will eventually lead into some of solutions and some of these ideas that we'll leave you with to kind of tackle those challenges in a productive way.
You got it. All right. Well, let's move on here. We got a lot to cover in 25 minutes here. So let's go to our next. We are the events team, right? I mean, was that on the job description, Ashley? You have to be the events team as well. Right. So let's jump into our first one here that we wanted to cover in terms of challenges. We're going to talk about the little to no time challenge. So Tom, why don't you kick us off here?
Right. So when you don't have time, one of the best ways to combat it is, in a certain sense, we always will have time. It's just where it can be accessed meaningfully, right? So if you don't have the time in your agenda, make use of some passive spaces, right? Do a drop-in CSR pavilion activity where you have maybe right by registration, like 4 6-foot tables set up to do a hygiene care kit assembly, right? Because what you can do is you can optimize on the time that is not being actively used by other events. You get them in the interstitials, you get them in the middle of doing another thing, and you always keep them engaged with your corporate values, because no matter what they're doing when they're going session to session, they're thinking about internal instruction, then they're thinking about, wow, I work for a company that wants to give back. Great. And then, oh, I'm going back to internal instruction again. And then I come back, oh, there's still more I can do. I'll keep doing that. And you constantly keep them in a positive headspace about the things that they're doing. And it adds to it as a little bit of an uplifting thing in between. So those are the ones that I would suggest in terms of when it comes down to no time. But Alan, do you have something maybe about a reception style event we can talk about?
Wow. Yes, as a matter of fact, I do, Tom. But I will say, at the same time, you talk about drop-in assembly. You can also be very creative here when you don't have time. One of the things you could do with those drop-in assemblies is where you place it. Like Tom said, doing something where you have you have it at next to registration. You have it at a meal where it's not taking up any more time. You have it also. One creative solution we like is the idea of an entry ticket. So the idea of actually walking an assembly line, because you have to hand in walk down an assembly line and pack a kit of some sort to get on a bus that's going to bring you to an offsite, to walk into the general session for the opening general session, to get into a meal. Your ticket is to pack that kit and hand it to the person at the door. Does that take any time? No, it actually doesn't take any time whatsoever, but that can fit into the agenda right there and allows you to make a difference in limited time. The reception style give back is something that's been very effective. It's something that we like to do. And look, ultimately, it's when you're going to have a reception, you have a multi-day event, whatever it is. There's going to be people gathering. It's end of general session, the day's over, they've had that break, and they're about to go to dinner, but there's a reception of some sort. Maybe it's a welcome reception, maybe it's the closing session. But there are ways to integrate it into these receptions in a great way. We did this most recently for a group of 1,500 people in Boston, and it's something that worked really well. Their CSR team approached us saying they had 1,500 people. They were challenged with making an impact. They had no time on the agenda to do it. So the event needed to serve as a means of networking, learning about these different organizations that they were supporting, if possible, also have a competitive twist. And they're like, what are we possibly going to do? Somebody here mentioned software development as one of the roles that they came. Well, we use software for this. We actually learned that there were 4 different business units that were participating in the event. And then what we did was we worked with the CSR team to align the 4 business units with 4 different nonprofits that they would basically be supporting. And the CSR team committed budget to donate directly to all 4 of those beneficiaries in a tiered manner. This is also great for them because, of course, you pay for our services. We're a for-profit company, but they were separately. They were able to do that through the meetings budget. But they were able to pay directly to the nonprofits that they were making, which is better for them, of course, for tax purposes, to pay the nonprofits, to give donate to the nonprofits, excuse me. But it was turned into a competition. So the idea was that the team with the highest average score was going to win. So what they did was when they walked into this big ballroom, they scanned a QR code, as you can kind of see the QR code right there on the screen there. They scanned the QR code with their phone. They didn't have to download an app. They put their name in and they picked their business unit. And then 10 minutes in, we took the stage and we put up a slide explaining the competition, explaining that we had different beneficiaries and here's what they do, explaining how the tiered financial donations would work. And then on a loop, we just kept the beneficiary organizations flowing. So the participants basically went around the room and they were finding 4-digit codes everywhere. And around the world, that meant on stickers on bartenders' arms, on high cocktail rounds, in the photo booth. They had a magician walking around, and if you actually did a trick with the magician, there was a code you'd get there too. All of those 4-digit codes, when entered into their phone, ultimately brought them to a question on their phone that they answered. Faster you answer, more points you get for their team. So it didn't take any time off the agenda. They could engage, and people were going around the room. They didn't have to do it fast. It wasn't a speed competition. It was just as you had a drink, got something to eat, networked, you can find these answers to these, you can find these codes, enter these questions, and ultimately they made a great donation. It was, again, like I said, not mandatory, no time was added to the agenda, and it worked with something that they were going to be doing anyway. So, Tom, you want to kind of touch on some kind of pro tips we have here before we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, really brief. I mean, all these things are, add-ons to things too. Add scavenger hunts to your trade shows. There's in the same scenario as you have above. But things at booths, keep things that are, I think the best way to kind of talk about it is keep things running in parallel. You know how we have background apps that are running things on our phones all the time? If you can have give back incentives and things running in the background that people can access whenever they're not actively engaging with other things, then you can ensure that time is always used meaningfully. And I think that's a pro tip. Think about having things running in parallel and in the background, and then that way you can have something that kind of runs itself. So Alan, I think we can move on to the next one.
We're going to go to the next challenge. Also, quick reminder, any questions, put them into the Q&A. We're going to, speed talk our way through our next few slides here because we do want to get to your questions as well. We're talking space here. All right, so planning room, you guys put space as a challenge. Some of you put space as a challenge for you, of course. It's like playing Tetris. It's trying to, for the meeting planners, trying to figure out what's going to go where and when, and then you have to prep for some spaces for longer from the hotel. It could be really, really difficult. So we do have several solutions that we work with on this. One of which is something that works really well, which is we'll talk about like with tables and without is kind of what we're going to talk about here. Because the bottom line is when you have a general session room where people are gathering, no matter what the seating format is, you do have space to work with. So let's talk about let's start with the without tables scenario. I mean, I don't know if this has happened to you guys where you have a situation where you're in general session and you're in theater. You just have all these seats next to each other. There are no tables. So what are you going to do? In that situation, we find that programs that are that actually are financial based, ones that actually aren't going to cost as much because we're not bringing in tangible items is great, but we're doing things like these give back game shows. We have different types that we do, and there's many out there. But the idea that we took one that was interesting. We had 900 people. They had to do something in a room that was preset. If you can just picture like a Trivial Pursuit game piece, the little pie with the 6 slices. That's how their stage was in the middle of the pie. So they wanted to support a school that they were associated with to refurbish their art room into a STEAM lab. And so first thing that we did was we found out what the school wanted, and it turns out they wanted 3D printers and STEM projects and iPads and more. So working with the meeting planners, we learned about that 6-section scenario. And what we did was we ended up working with the school and brought 2 kids in to be on each of these pie pieces, if you will. And they were playing with those teams to try and earn tech backpacks. The group was going to be trying to answer questions and earn tech backpacks for their kids. We basically had everyone in the room log into the show, not just like a team captain, but everyone. So everyone in their big pie piece were able to answer these questions and try and get things right. Each round was also customized to ask some tech questions because it's a tech company. For example, do you know what the first computer mouse was made of? So it was thematic. Tom, do you know what the first computer mouse was made of?
Happens to be wood, actually.
It is wood, and you are correct. I'll give you the points. But STEM questions, client questions, a great also way to reinforce business content. And after each round, we showed them the standings, showed them like one of those temperature gauges to see if they had reached the milestone that would earn them things like the 3D printers and the iPads, et cetera. Ultimately, we had, of course, determined that we're going to work so hard to make them get there, but we added this extra engagement by having kids there and participating with the teams. Ultimately, they supported the school in a way that they needed to, but also were able to give not just the winning team's kids tech backpacks, but they gave them to everyone. So they didn't have to pack anything. But they were able to use some of their funds from their foundation side, not the meeting planning side, to buy all those materials and supplies and have them donated versus having to pack those things and pay for all that stuff to come to the venue where they didn't even have a space to pack it. So these kind of game show ideas, they can make a difference in any way you see fit, teams or individuals, but also any sort of organization can be supported here. So in terms of meshing with your philanthropic interests there. So Tom, you want to talk a little bit about what you could do, thinking about general session or even a meal room that has tables and what you can do there when you don't have a lot of space to move things around?
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, again, you've got to be flexible and work with your space to maximize the impact, because we've all lost ourselves in the logistics, thinking about what tables have to go where, what wiring has to go where. So when you work with those kind of spaces, work with consolidated and kitted programs, right? We have programs where we can have everything in one single bag, where you make a set of beads and a bracelet that will then get donated to a local cancer foundation, something that can be small and consolidated to fit on a table or on a row of tables in the room towards the back, where a team captain can come up and grab things. We've even had ones where we've actually just hidden them under the table, because the banquet rounds were huge. We had like 6 people per table. We hid it underneath it. And then we had a typical game show moment where we were like, all right, everybody, if you look under your tables, you'll find. And then we had everything there. So we were able to do a little bit of pre-prep work, get that done. And it looks seamless to all the people who participate. The only people who will look underneath the table are people who drop something. And even then, they're not going to then go up to the front of your room. It's like, everybody, look under your tables. Like, that's not going to happen. So instead, this is why, if you can do things that are consolidated, it becomes a much better way to kind of use your existing infrastructure. So don't feel limited by the fact that you've got that kind of space there. Think how you can maximize it and what new opportunities it will afford you. Because a few pro tips that I can tell you for all of that is just rethink the routine. But everything can be repurposed, right? There are sections in the back that you were supposed to use for your for snacks and drinks, but they ate them all. Now you've got a new space where you can lay things out, right? You have the foyer space where you can have your responsible people go out to the front and take that the information and the content and bring it back to your attendees. Surprise them with different ways of having people maybe have the curtains lift up on the stage to show something. There are all these ways, so long as you can create a compelling story behind it. It will always seem in place, because I know we can think, oh, we'll place something underneath the table. Doesn't that seem kind of weird? And it's like, no, if you incorporate it into the narrative of what you're doing, it seems intentional. And when things are intentional, people see the skill and the effort that's put behind it. So, and another quick thing too about having things in the background, we also did for a client, they had one of our quiz shows run in the background for a week. They had a week-long conference, kept it open. We gave them specific logins for each of their people, and they just logged in whenever they had time during their days. Sometimes it was during their lunch, sometimes it was during another activity, and we changed the content. So we allowed them to engage with the content on their own time. So even with no space, there are always ways around it. So Alan, I think we can go to the next.
Yeah, and I think you answered some of Danielle's question there too. I think this is real good in terms of production value is really important there, Danielle, too. But Tom just covered that really well. I do want to move to our last one we wanted to cover today. We only have a few minutes left. We want to get some Q&A in here, but this multiple location, this came up. I know a lot of people clicked on this in terms of one of the key areas they wanted to discuss, because of course having teams in multiple locations, not just at that national sales meeting in Las Vegas, but what about everyone else that's streaming in, Or what if you have teams that aren't coming together, they're at their different offices, or they're all remote, okay? So these are things that definitely come up a lot, and we want to talk about that now. We'll kick it off talking about just the hybrid events. We're going to try and put this whole slide in a 5 minutes or less here, Tom, so we can kind of move through the remaining slides here. You want to kick it off with our hybrid events and tech solutions, please?
Absolutely. So hybrid events are a new norm now. Everyone is going in different places. They have different branches, different offices, remote workers. But what we can do is we can still get the same kind of engagement so long as we keep a uniform amount of items being sent to people. So for example, you can send items to an office, people come pick them up, bring them home. You can have them sent out to their homes in general. Last week, we have a Shine a Light program where we send these small solar powered lights that allow for young kids to read in developing countries where they might only have kerosene lamps, and we give them a sustainable alternative. So we had a central location in Houston, but our materials sent around the world. We were in England, we were in Brazil, we were in Singapore, and no matter the location, they had the same items. And when they have the same items, they have the same mission. And when they have the same mission, they feel the same impact. So they engage as one team across the world. So we've done this also for stuffed animals. We've done this with coloring in images to help with food insecurity. All these things are allowing you to kind of come together in a way that distance doesn't matter. So Alan, what about you for that?
Well, I was going to say, Tommy, giving a good example. I mean, there was a time where we actually did work with a group that was, they knew they weren't going to be able to get everybody there. The group in Boston made stuffed animals, but what they did was the virtual participants were able to actually use a digital drawing that they did on their computer, and those drawings got basically transposed into, basically the images got transposed onto bags, that the bags were then shipped to the organization that they were donating to, and the stuffed animals were placed into those bags. So it was kind of like the people on site made the stuffed animals, the people off site that were participating in the event were able to participate by making these bags. So it was a combined effort, which was really cool. One of the things I want to throw out there too is it's sometimes you have a situation where international participants are involved and like, hey, this is great. I'm so excited that we're donating to the food bank in Orlando, but people are hungry where I live too, And so we always recommend, if you're going to do something where you're going to have the group on site that's packing weekend food bags for kids on free and reduced lunch programs in schools, or what have you, maybe do something where those people who have streamed in and have participated in the event, maybe you tell them also, you make a donation that goes to an organization that's combating international hunger, so that people know that even in their location, hunger is being considered as well. So consider not just giving back locally in those situations, which is so easy to do, or not just giving back to the headquarters community, but how can you allow there to be impact where everyone lives, especially where in this remote workforce situation that many people are in. Want to cover two quick things here. We mentioned impact kits. Any sort of kit, okay, that can be sent out to people to complete can work. We have a 3,300 person day of service that's happening in next month. And they're going to have most of the people there, but there are 300 virtual participants, and they are going to set to receive tangible items that they're going to actually make at home, and they already have pre-addressed labels that they're going to get everything that's going to support the very same organizations that the on-site crew is going to. So you can do things with some sort of kit sent out to people, sometimes physically, sometimes digitally, to support those organizations. Last thing I wanted to kind of mention on this slide is just the idea. It says lead up challenge months. Hey, in the leading up to an event, ask people to do something that's going to ultimately be that's going to add to the donation. Tom mentioned the idea of a quiz being open throughout a week. We do things where it says in the lead up to the event, if you color in this design, it is going to we're going to see which division ultimately gets to donate the most weekend food bags by virtue of coloring in these designs. We're just going to these kinds of things. There's a lot of different ideas that you can actually do for those types of programs. And there's more. We're not going to go through any of the ones that we have here on these additional creative solutions, but it is something that we can share later. There's just a lot of different ways that we can do things with limited time, limited space, with remote audiences that are going to ultimately allow you to engage with your teams and get the power of what you do out there. One of the things that we're gonna, I know Jean's here, so that means she wants to jump in here. I do want to give our advice here, which is to basically ask these questions, and you will get this, okay? You will get these. You'll get these questions to consider, but are you prepared for those annual events that are coming up next year? And which of these solutions we discussed might actually be applicable for the ones that you're running? And what is your relationship with the event meeting management team? Would an alignment workshop be appropriate? I mean, that's something to keep in mind. We do have this kind of guide that we're going to share if you're interested, that will actually give you what our agenda would be for an alignment workshop. So we do want to get to some questions. We know that. So what do you say, Jean?
So I say we've actually run out of time, but I actually think you've answered all the questions that have come in from the chat and through the Q&A. I passed that one along to you. So I think we're good. If participants have additional questions for the Impact for Good team, you can reach out to them directly. We will include their contact information in the follow-up email along with the recording. And with that, I would like to thank you both for this great, very interactive session, which I love, and your tips, because I know all of our members are grappling with how to best do their CSR events. And it's in a lot of cases, a lot of pain point. It's a pain point. It's also a lot of work. So thank you to you, for all of you who are participants. We do want your feedback. So please fill out our very, very short survey. There is a link in the chat and there's a QR code on the screen. And with that, We hope to see you at our remaining CSR virtual sessions. We have one more today and we have 3 tomorrow. So with that, I hope you all have a great afternoon and a lovely evening.